So good afternoon, everybody. My name's Christopher Lynch, and I am presenting on behalf of Westminster Kingsway College for the Acton Research Project for the CFE. My partner in crime is Angela Christie. Today she's not going to be with us just simply because she's away on maternity leave, which is amazing. So I'll be presenting today on my own. Okay, so first and foremost, the who and the where. So we're based in King's Cross, but we are across I've got three there, I do apologise, but we're actually across 4 different places. The one that's missing off there is actually Regent Street. And then we've got Soho and Victoria. Across all of those, we've got 14,000 learners, of which 900 of those are this year's GCSE entrants. And those entrants are just for King's Cross, I believe, yeah? So our hypothesis that we set up, and this was formed with us coming to Brighton and doing some workshops and stuff, but the question that we wanted to pose was, does the use of sensory tech impact reset GCSE learners in terms of motivation, engagement, and then feeding through to their results? So that essentially is our question. So the hypothesis is the use of sensory tech. Now, obviously, I know at this point, many of you probably don't know what sensory tech is. So at some point, I'm going to sort of give a little explanation of what that is exactly. But yeah, that's what we were using basically to do part of our assessment with regards to engagement and motivation. Okay, so what was our why? So with the research projects, with any bit of research, you've got to think about what your why is, find your reason. And for us, that kind of stemmed from our desire to engage the learners, because it was felt by all, and this is not just like by the researchers, this is the whole department, the math department. We feel that our results are not really reflective of our learners' ability. It's more reflective of their motivation and engagement, which for us as teachers leaves us hope, doesn't it, really? Because it's not down to their ability, it's down to maybe our approach, their approach, lots of different things that can be changed. So that was our entry point, basically, believing that actually we can raise achievement via motivation and engagement. So our research method, I'm going to skip through some of these quite quickly because I've got quite a lot of slides. So our research method, we used questionnaires and surveys. We sat down, did interviews with students. Oh, let me just go back one. Oops, my apologies for that. Oh, I think I'm going the wrong way there. I do apologise. There's the roller on my mouse. Right there. There we go. Sorry. Interviews. Yeah, so we did interviews and observation. So that was a key part and not to be overlooked, basically, as you can see there with the eyes. Observation was a massive part of our study, looking at what the learners were doing and basically trying to respond to that in some way as well. So what is sensory tech quickly? So sensory tech is not a VLE. So I've got someone watching today who's definitely going to be chuckling now thinking, yes, it's not a VLE. It's artificial intelligence, massive difference between VLE and artificial intelligence. So what our artificial intelligence allows our learners to do is it maps individual paths. Now, later on, I will discuss how that actually becomes a bit of a problem, because if we set up a task for our learners, but through the AI, it takes them down different strands, it then makes it a little bit different for us, difficult for us to draw comparisons, if that makes sense. Yeah, so we figured that out partway through the study. The other thing is it's an amazing tool because it allows our learners to do things on the go. So the learners could just be on their mobile. Again, with this motivation and engagement, what we're trying to do is give the learners tools to be able to do their math anywhere. So it's flip learning, trying to get them to get involved wherever. The tool, again, is mainly something that we use outside of the classroom, not inside. And with it being AI, at the back end of it, we get like really rich data that tells us what the students do and how long they've done it, what videos they've viewed, how long they did an assessment, what the scores were, and so forth. So that's sensory tech in a sort of a very brief nutshell. Now, in terms of our respondents, our sample was 105 students in total. The age is between 16 and 19, and it was split over 4 groups. Now, I did say that there was 900 in our cohort at King's Cross, but the 105 that we looked at was both Angela Christie's and mine's classes, or a part of our classes, not all of them. And within that 105, we had a smaller sample that we were doing the interviews and questionnaires with, the interviews with, sorry. Okay, so this is our actual research process itself, yeah? So what we did was we give them an entry questionnaire. All learners across the board for doing Century Tech got the initial questionnaire, but then we had some specific questions for our task as well. So they got this entry questionnaire, which was basically gauging motivation and making sure that they could access the system. Then we'd, as teachers, set up tasks on Century Tech. That's here. I don't know if you can see my mouse just going around there. Yep, so we set up a task on Century Tech, and we would reinforce those tasks via Edmodo. And Edmodo was just the tool that we used to nudge them, because unfortunately within Century Tech, what we can't do is send them messages. So we utilize Edmodo to send messages, which then prompts them to get them into the system. And that's a really good tool. Inside the lesson would be obviously based on the topic that we set in Century Tech. I'll go through the topics in a moment. And that lesson would basically, we'd look at the data from Century Tech and it would inform some of our practices within the class. And then we would do an exit questionnaire as well. And then the process was reiterated. Now, the reiteration, the cycle, we never got through all of our cycles, but we did get through all of our topics. So we got through the first round. Now, so what we found. So nearly all students completed the initial questionnaire on paper, and some Century Tech data was missing. This was due to our cohort, vocational learners, placements, causes problems basically. And yeah, that was a bit of an issue. And then obviously we went into this lockdown. Some of the in-class assessments that we did, unfortunately, are missing because they're at work. So we were unable to correlate the Century Tech data with the assessments in class. But then, as I said, we then realised anyway that this Century Tech data and the stuff that we were doing in class, there was a bit of a disconnect between the two because they were doing these separate paths anyway. So then you couldn't really draw these strong conclusions that we thought we were going to be able to do. So 76.95% completed one task. So I don't know where that part of a student or whatever it was, and 33% completed two tasks and 15% completed all three tasks. So what that says is that the bottom bit, I would take you through what the three tasks look like, but basically, essentially we got 15% of that 105 through all three tasks, essentially. And this is what the tasks look like. So I just need to move this a second. So we had shape and angles. Now, when we did this, now when I'm showing you this isn't what we did in class, this was on Century Tech, yeah? The actual AI bit of software. So the students were not particularly knowledgeable of the angles topic, but Century Tech did prime them and they accessed all the resources and scored pretty high on Century Tech. With regards to compound measures, we found that there was a drop. Now, part of that drop could be due to the fact that we felt that students done so well on the first topic that we sort of missed some of the layers of scaffolding. And then that maybe fed back through to the way they interacted with it. So maybe it was a little bit harder. And then when we came back into the classroom, we picked up on that. And then finally, we did Pythagoras. Now, there was a massive drop off on here because this was the last cycle. And so we only got 23% of the learners through onto this particular cycle. And in class, we noticed that there was a massive drop in terms of their understanding. Albeit many of the students had seen it before, but because they just turned up to class pretty cold, we could see the difference between the other two topics where they were a lot warmer than this topic. So we could see that the Century Tech was priming them. Okay, so this is analysis of some of the qualitative data. So I'm just going to read this for you. So regardless of statistical correlation between Century Tech engagement and the topic performance, learners did report that the flexibility the system allowed them made them feel that the software supported their work-life balance, which was amazing, really. I'll show you some of the comments, but I work part-time and I have a lot of college work from my main course. Time is a real issue. So, students, they've got a lot on, and it's being able to work with that and trying to keep them motivated and engaged. So here you can see that this student benefited from being able to pick and choose the times when they were going to do this work. It's handy having it on your phone, another student. So this might have been a student that could possibly do some of the work on their commute into college. I liked being able to do homework in bits rather than all in one time. Again, being able to sort of compartmentalize what they were doing and having that autonomy and a bit of control. So we can see that really helped. And it did feed into the lessons because these learners, I couldn't say with any great detail who that is in particular, but what we did notice when they were coming in the classroom, it was altering the way they were behaving. They seemed a little bit keener, like they knew stuff, and were we going to be doing certain bits? They were asking questions. So analysis and further analysis in terms of the interview data. So the learners generally enjoyed using the software regardless of their feelings towards mathematics. So these are some of the themes that we were kind of looking at. Can we use CentriTech instead of coming to your class for us? That was what one of the group learners said. Yeah. And once my login problems were sorted, I used it a lot. It was good. The login problems were fixed easily. So that was a common thing, logins. Yeah, but we did come up with strategies. Again, Edmodo supported that. So as long as we made sure that all our students could get Edmodo, then we could keep pumping information through to them just to remind them to go back and have a look at things all the time, just positively reinforcing getting them onto CentriTech basically. Okay, so the videos were useful. So not only were the videos useful, but so were the slides that they used as well. Students reported that all of that really did help. So this is the last bit in terms of analysis, in terms of the interview data. So where does the motivation to pass mathematics come from? So I'm really motivated to pass GCSE mathematics, and this is one of those ones because of external motivations, basically, university. Yeah. This one, passing will open many opportunities. Again, another external. And this one, I don't know if you can see the caps. This one starts shouting at us. I just want to move on from it and be done with it. Yeah, I get it. But again, so, you know, it's working, understanding that our learners do want to pass, but we've got to motivate them to get them engaged, and it's about how we do that. And CentriTech, we was finding, was having an impact. But so, okay, come to our conclusion. So what we found was trying to reach a conclusion, raise more questions. So, and, you know, we wanted to sew it up, but that didn't happen. So it just raised more questions basically than it did actually answer things, which is good. But it's not a negative at all, because it gives us more to go and inquire about. Part of the reason it raised more questions, again, that thing about the data and the AI allowing them to go down different paths, and then us trying to bring that form to some sort of calculation to then try get some sort of percentages, just wasn't working. It wasn't working, and we needed to accept that. But what did work was the rich information that we were able to share with the learners, talking, the discussions, that did work. The interviews, that worked. Getting a better understanding of what the learners' needs were and how they felt about this flipped learning technique that we were trying to utilize, or we're not trying, we did utilize, that worked. So for us, it became a thing about how do we hold on to this richness going forward? How do we keep that and then somehow sew that into, discuss with the learners to draw out more of that stuff, making part of the dialogue, and then feed that back into the way we deliver, yeah? So for us, one of the best things that we got out of this was the dialogue with the learners, and because it made them part of the conversation, which was awesome. So thus far, Westminster Kingsway's collaborative journey, what we believe it's done is it's altered the dialogue between us and the learners. We're communicating differently, yeah? So it's definitely altered the way in which we communicate with our learners. One of the reasons that is, as I pointed out earlier, was because they were now coming to the classroom, not all learners, I'm not going to say, you know, we had droves of learners at the door with their hands up asking questions, but we did notice that there was a new thing going on. They were coming to the door and they were having conversations, walking into the room and asking us whether certain things were going on, and we were able to talk back. So it's like this new dialogue happening, which was awesome. The other great thing about their collaborative journey, it's for me, definitely from a personal perspective, what it's done for me is that I've started engaging with, like, take Newham, for instance, Julie Baxter, Elizabeth, Mo, we've worked together and we've discussed things. Now, I've been teaching for 13 years and I couldn't say that I've ever really worked extensively with other organisations as I have now. And so what I would say this process has really done is brought us as educators together to think about our learners collectively, and to, instead of sort of like almost like pitting each other against each other, recognising that actually we're all in education because we care about learners. So if something's happening over there that's really good, can we get some of that over here? And if we're doing some practices over here that you enjoy, yeah, why sure, have some. So for me, that was awesome, just the collaborative approach. And then what that also done, and it's like, because we've been doing this for about close to 9, 10 months, is with the mastery. I know this isn't about the mastery so much, but with the mastery, what it done was within our department, it got us thinking differently. Yeah, we started working with what I can only really call intent. Yeah, we started doing things on purpose, deliberately, trying to make it happen. And so that's one of the other awesome things that I would say that this whole collaborative process has brought to us as a organisation. That would be WKC. And some considerations for the future in terms of action research. So one of the considerations, if we're going to draw back to our study and the framework that we were trying to do, is we need to keep a better grip on our learners, and like be able to track them better. Yeah, because through the tracking, that's when we're going to be able to assess what it is that we need to change. But because we were losing them here and there, it was very difficult to hold on to a learner and map that journey. Secondly, we need to be more robust with our assessment techniques. So finding rigorous ways to assess, yes, that word, rigor, but also finding flexible ways that you can do this as well, that aren't so rigid. The learners don't always feel like that. It's an assessment that's actually happening. So more robust ways of doing it. And this is because of engagement and motivation. It's not easy to measure, is it? Do you see what I mean? So, and obviously one of the ways to measure it is just through this output of results, but that's not all the only thing that you can measure in terms of engagement and motivation. Okay, and again, breaking sort of the hierarchy in terms of discussion, not only with managers, not only with my peers, but also with the learners, being able to sit down at a table face to face, and it's no longer this hierarchical thing. It's actually just discussing, what do you need? What can I do? That type of discussion. Now, I believe that that is going to have a massive impact on engagement for us going forward if we can incorporate that. And then finally, it's about finding better indicators to be able to measure engagement. And one of the things that we definitely missed off was having other teachers come into the room and observe us. And I feel like if we were to do that, use the observational process a little bit more, get other lecturers in to come and observe what we're doing, priming them with what it is that we're looking for and seeing if they can see it too. And yeah, that's kind of it. Cheers.